Hello, everyone. My name is Eric. I am 27 years old. I have two mothers. My biological mother died early because of a serious illness when I was 16, which made me very sad. A year later, my father took a 27-year-old woman home and introduced her to me as my stepmother. Needless to say, I hated her so much for daring to enter my family, to steal my biological mother's position. Back then, I wasn't a kid anymore, but not yet an adult. However, I always thought I knew everything. There's a saying that goes, "The new-come stepmother hates the children born to a first wife." I heard it so much that I started to believe the saying. Moreover, my real mother and I were very close, so I vowed not to let any woman live peacefully if they stepped in this family to take my mother's place. As you can see, the day my stepmother was married to my father, she was only 27 years old. There was only a 10-year difference in age between me and my stepmother. Because we were both young, our relationship was very stressful. Whenever my stepmother said something, I had to protest and argue back 10 times more aggressively. My stepmother tried to intervene from the smallest things, like my eating habits or my daily routines. Once I saw my stepmother in my room, rummaging through my dirty clothes, I threw in the corner of the room. I lost my temper and called my stepmother a thief and a homewrecker. We shouted loudly and even got into a small fight with me gripping her hand when she tried to reach to slap me. That time, my father was extremely angry. Failing in dissuading us with words, he rushed into the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife, ran up to my room, and slammed the knife down on the table, shouting, "Kill me first, then you guys can argue in whichever way you want." My dad's act with his knife stabbed into my stepmother's heart, because after that day, she became calmer and tried to get closer to me. I just wish that the knife had actually stabbed her in the heart, so that she would appear from my sight, leaving my father and me alone. The more she tried to take care of me, the more I hated her. Ever since that argument, my stepmother never entered my room without asking for my permission again. Of course, even if she asked for permission, I would never let her. Every day when I came home from school, I found a glass of fresh fruit juice on the kitchen table with the words, "For Eric." Knowing that my stepmother had done it, I would not even bother to drink it, but I deliberately poured it into the sink in the messiest way, so my stepmother had to clean it up. Strangely, she still didn't protest, yet attempted to ask about my stories at school, or the food I liked so that she could cook to suit my taste better. What an abject woman! She was just acting in front of my father. When my father was not at home, she never dared to approach me. However, at dinner time, with the presence of my father, she began to talk to me and told me what to do. If not for my father, I would have shouted to silence her and told her to leave me alone. But being silent did not mean I compromised. I had another, quieter way to make this crafty young lady disappear from my house. My stepmother didn't go to work. She just hung around at home doing housework all day and sometimes went shopping or chatting with friends. Knowing this weakness of hers, I took advantage of it right away. I did many things, ranging from the simplest, like adding a light enema to my dad's dinner cooked by my stepmother to make him scold her for not fulfilling her smallest tasks when she only stayed at home. Or with the car that my father bought for my stepmother, I deliberately used metal bars to scratch the paint on the front of the car to make her look useless in my father's eyes. But that was not enough for my father to kick her out of the house. Knowing that fact, I made more daring plans. I went to the supermarket to buy cheap men's perfume, different from the one my father used. When my father went to work and my stepmother was in the flower garden, I sneaked into her bedroom and sprayed the smell of perfume on their pillowcases. That night, my father and stepmother had a tense quarrel in their bedroom. The argument was so loud that even though they closed the door tightly, I could hear it outside. Their feelings somewhat cracked after that, and I gloated. I still needed to make one more final move to make my stepmother's image become the ugliest possible. And what would be more difficult to accept than cheating and incest? I knew she started to be wary of me, so that time I just texted and talked to my dad privately. I made up a story that my stepmother often dressed sexy at home, acting slutty to solicit me, but right before he came home she would change and act differently. Then I also used technology to create fake messages to slander that my stepmother had been asking me to have sex with her, since my father suspected her bringing a strange man into the house. That night, after talking to me in the garden, my father was furious. He could be very grumpy when he got angry. My father didn't explain much, just called my stepmother a slut and a terrible woman before kicking her out of the house that same night. When my stepmother spoke in tears, demanding an explanation from my father, he was so angry that he just slapped her and slammed the door. Witnessing that scene, I didn't feel too happy like I thought, but somehow regretted my actions. From that day, my stepmother did not return home. My father did not marry any more wives because his work became busier, and he was too frustrated with family matters. As for me, I kind of felt empty. Suddenly, the house no longer had a maid like before. so everything turned upside down. My father was very irritable, so when he came home and found that I hadn't prepared dinner, he would be in a bad mood the whole night, which was very scary. Then, there was no one to wash my clothes either. They just piled up and smelled in the room. The garden also wilted because they lacked my stepmother's caring hand. I gradually felt the emptiness in my own house when my stepmother was kicked out. Fast forward to the present. I'm 27 years old and have a son with my former wife. I first got married at 23 because my lover was pregnant. Of course, getting married because of a pregnancy when we were too young cannot guarantee long-term happiness. We broke up less than a year later, and she left me to raise the baby. My son is 4 years old now, and I'm about to remarry. My fiancée is named Bianca, 27 years old. Ironically, Bianca is my stepmother's niece. I didn't know about that until our wedding party, when my stepmother was also present. Seeing her, I was extremely worried, but nothing happened. My stepmother just stood from afar, sipping champagne and watching the ceremony. But the conversation between me and my wife that night broke my heart. Bianca said that my stepmother never remarried because her first marriage broke down and she was kicked out of the house in shame. It seemed Bianca wasn't told about the dirty tricks I did to my stepmother. She emotionally said that my stepmother repeatedly told her a lot of things when she knew that Bianca was also about to become a second wife and stepmother. My stepmother had told my wife every bit of how to deal with and treat my stepchild. She cried when she told Bianca that when she stepped into her husband's house, she broke the balance of her husband's son, making him uncomfortable and opposed. She told Bianca to keep calm, to resolve everything, and avoid conflict at all costs. If there is a conflict, she should vent to her husband to solve it together, because the problem is of the whole family, not just between the stepmother and the children. Only then will harmony be created and maintained. She said a lot of things, but the phrase, "always treat your stepchild with love," is repeated over and over again. In the end, my stepmother cried when emphasizing that love, generosity, and patience would gradually lower the rebellion, and told my wife not to make mistakes like her. Suddenly, I respected my stepmother so much at that moment. She did not hate and intend to take revenge on me after all the suffering I caused her. I sobbed, "Stepmother, if only I had been more knowledgeable then, you and my father wouldn't have had a tragic end." What do you guys think of my story? Should I reconnect with my stepmother to apologize? Give me some advice, please.